tratado de olvidarte. ¿Cuántas veces sin lograrlo así? ¿Cuántas veces, cuántas noches sin tus besos? Aún sabiendo que te alejas más de mí.
We're going to go ahead and get started with this breakout session, which is titled Being an Authentic Leader. And I just want to note that we know that being an authentic leader is a lifelong journey. So we're not going to resolve it in 30 minutes, right? We're not going to resolve it in today's symposium. It is a lifelong journey, especially for people of color. I am the session moderator. My name is Dr. Damary Bonilla-Rodriguez, and I'm the director of Leaders of Color New York, where we build a bench of Black and Brown leaders. I want to shout out Leaders of Color fellows and alumni that are with us this morning, as well as our colleagues from Prospanica, New York, whose board I proudly serve on. I also serve on the Poconos Commissioner to Governor Tom Wolf's Commission on Latino Affairs, where I chair the Education Committee. I'm appointed to the Monroe County Children and Youth Advisory Board and elected to the East Stroudsburg Area School District School Board, where I chair the Education and Negotiation Committees. In this capacity, I was the first Hispanic elected in November of 2019, and I serve on several boards across the country on which I am the first Hispanic and or person of color, which is why I'm looking forward to today's discussion with Shakira and Glory. I'm going to ask that they each introduce themselves, sharing where they work and a little bit about their background. Shakira, can you kick us off, please?
Definitely. Good morning. My name is Shakira Ramos. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut, originally born and raised. I attended Trinity College right in Hartford and have a degree in mechanical engineering. Since graduating from Trinity, I've been working at Pratt & Whitney in various roles, starting in aerodynamics and the engineering, all the way to a technical analyst, a customer experience fleet manager, and currently part of their product marketing team. I've been with them for 19 years. Outside of work, I've been involved in the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, both Connecticut chapter and on the national level. I am part of the Hispanic Leadership Forum. I've also served on the Board of Trustees at both Trinity College and at Miss Porter's School. And recently, I started a community called Women STEM Together. So for women in STEM to come together, talk about our, like Damary said, how can we share our stories, talk about how we can empower each other and just lift each other up. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you. Excited to have you here. Glory, will you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Glory Aviles. I'm an insurance operations director at Mass Mutual. I have a degree in legal studies and I'm currently pursuing my MBA. I'm passionate about empowering my employees to reach their full potential. I also am a huge advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is where we get our great ideas, innovation, and it's also the right thing to do. I'm very excited to speak with everyone. I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. And I'll tell you that when we had our prep discussion, one of the things we talked about, we're going to jump right in. One of the things we talked about was even introductions and how it is difficult sometimes to talk about yourself in this way, talk about your accomplishments, talk about the things that you've done, talk about the titles that you've earned, the degrees that you've earned, because you are made to feel like it's not humble or you shouldn't be bragging about yourself. And so one of the things that we do with our fellows that I want to start us off with today is I always say, leave that concept and that notion at the door, at the virtual door, at the physical door. When you walk into the room, you are there to contribute. And part of that and part of being your authentic self is being able to share your accomplishments. It has taken a lot of work, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears. I know, because it's taken that for me to be able to complete the degrees that you've earned, to be able to earn the titles that you have, to be in the spaces that you are. So I just want to preface this discussion by saying, please do brag about yourself. It is not humble to brag about yourself, but somebody is watching. Somebody needs you to be able to get the idea that they can do it because you've done it, right? So I just want to put that out there. And so one of the things that we're going to do is start talking about the authentic leadership piece. And I want to kick us off with a quote by Steve Robinson, who said, at its most basic level, authenticity means being genuine, not a replica, not a copy or imitation. And that's something I think we can all keep with us front and center. So I want to ask our panelists, what does it mean to you when we talk about being an authentic leader? Shakira, would you kick us off?
Definitely. So as like you mentioned, it's about being yourself, being not afraid to speak up. And I know it's not easy, especially if you're in a field where maybe you're a minority, right? Being from a woman of STEM, there's not many that look like me. So I've had to be able to feel uncomfortable. That has been my biggest, is stepping out of that comfort zone. You know, growing up in a Latino family, there's many things that are placed on you, perspectives, there's social norms, but we kind of have to learn how to kind of step away and take that initial, be like, you know what, I may not feel comfortable, but I have to do it. So first, it's just taking that step to feel uncomfortable, be in places where there may not be people that look like you, but know that you're going to represent others like you and the younger generations like you. So that has always been my thing, is to be that voice, to bring awareness, especially for women in STEM, where we're a minority, both as Latinas and as women in the field.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And one of the things that we had talked about in our conversation getting ready for today was reflecting on how we engage others. So that notion of being a role model, right? And being able to engage others, whether it's as I did it, so you can do it, or whether it's as an ally or partner, are really critical. Shakira, can you react to the how do we engage others notion?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is our first event where we can engage others, get to know each other, find mentors, and most importantly, find sponsors, right? There's a huge difference between mentorship and sponsorship, but you can't get a sponsor first without having a mentorship or relationship with somebody. So definitely get involved with communities. Like I said, I started the Women's STEM Together so that we can all come together. So find events and find communities and memberships of people like you that you want to work together, so that you can find mentors, you can help each other and elevate each other.
Excellent. And that's one of the things that I want to ask for participants to do now. And Tanya, thank you for share resources of organizations, of articles, of books that are that have been helpful to you, that can be helpful to others, because we do want to be sure that we're providing that support from one another. So please use the chat box to share. And then Gloria, I want to ask you to share a response to the question about what does it mean to you when we talk about authentic leadership, as well as the engagement of others.
Sure, thank you. With the engagement of others, as a leader, I definitely try to lead by example and be a mentor to others. I've built my career on being bold. So when I go to a meeting or a presentation or anything like that, I try to think of, if I was fearful and didn't speak up, how would my team feel? How would my daughter feel? Because you never know who's watching. You never know who you could be working with or anything like that. So if I lead by example and be really brave, they know they're capable of the same things and much more.
Absolutely. I would say that resonates for me as well, because one area that motivates me sometimes is fighting for others, more so than fighting for myself. I find that it is a little bit more difficult to stand up and fight for myself on a day-to-day. I'm still learning that. But when I see an injustice towards someone else, that really fuels me. I'm like, okay, I can tolerate this, but I'm not going to let somebody else deal with that, especially when it comes to our younger generation. And what I'm doing is using that as an opportunity to remind myself that I have to fight for myself as well, right? So on a day-to-day, what does your fight look like? That's something that I wanted us to talk about. The level of your fight. What does the fight look like for you? What are the consequences of the fight? You know, sometimes we get tired or we're drained. There's burnout that comes with leadership. So Glory, would you share with me, when you think about your fight in terms of leadership and being authentic, what does that mean to you?
What it means to me a lot of times is having to deal with a lot of stereotypes, a lot of microaggression. So being labeled the angry Latina or talking with my hormones or something of that sort, which makes it very difficult to speak up because you don't want to be labeled. But I always try to think of something when I'm meeting, and if I'm trying to hold back of if I'm if I think about this and I think about this meeting and if I'm laying in bed tonight, are there things that I wanted to say that I didn't? Because when you stand up and you say what's on your mind and your ideas, again, it gives other people the ideas and thought to do the same thing because a lot of times you're the only face in the room. So it's important to make sure that you're saying what you feel and that your opinions are important and deserve attention just like everyone else's.
I appreciate that. And I want to come back to you, Shakira, because something you had said was to be authentic, you have to know yourself. And so knowing yourself in part is also knowing your fight. So tell us your fight.
Definitely, like as I mentioned, so just some numbers because I like numbers. 24% of women of color are a part of the STEM workforce. 8% are Latinos and 3% are Latinas. So that is my fight, right? It's getting more women in the STEM field and making sure that our voices are heard at the table. Not just being heard, but being heard at the table where decisions need to be made, right? To hold a seat at the table to be seen, heard, and empowered. That is my fight, right? To raise the voice and awareness about the biases that we hold, not just as women, but as women of color. And I think the consequences, though, is you can't always let your guards down, which can lead to the burnout, right? And then not taking care of ourselves because we're putting others in first. So that is some of the consequences that I've noticed. One of the other consequences is that you become the go-to person. So everybody's going to rely on you. Like, oh, she has this, Shakira has it. So you step up all the time, right? So then people are not going to step up all the time. And I think for me, that's sometimes the consequences of fight, and you get exhausted, and burnout is a real thing.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I do to avoid burnout is one, put myself in the situations like we are right now, which is to continue learning, right? Being sure that I participate in webinars and communicate with and engage with individuals that I know are going to fill my cup so that I'm able to continue doing the work that I do. And I would say for me, my fight is in the education space, in the various organizations and boards that I serve on. When you see the inequities and things like the crisis, the pandemic have caused some of these inequities to rise to the forefront of social media, of the news and other platforms. But I keep saying those of us that have experienced these injustices or have experienced these situations, we've already known, right? We know what it's like to be poor. We know what it's like not to have money for higher education. We know the struggles. And so we didn't need the media to put it in a news story to learn about it. This is our fight. This is our day-to-day fight. So for me, it's trying to ensure that all of our students have access to quality education and sharing the resources and information so that other states, other areas have the opportunity to replicate, because something that we do is often work in silos, right? We don't share the information. We're trying to get ahead. We do some good work, but if we're not collaborating, where does that take us? And so I want to touch on something else in terms of, for those of us that are Latinas, for those of us that are women of color, for those that are people of color, because I'm excited to have some men in the group today. Even if we're in different geographic locations, even if we're in different sectors of work, we share the experiences of being treated in certain ways. And, Gloria alluded to being the angry Latina. There's also things like, the angry Black woman, the Latin temper, and all of these labels that we inherit when we speak up, right? When we're bold enough to speak up in spaces that were not created or not conducive for us to speak up. So how do we overcome these challenges and still remain authentic in leadership? Gloria, I want to ask you to weigh in.
Sure. So being able to fight against this and these stereotypes is really the drive towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we're a beautiful mix of ideas, cultures, and experience. So the key to innovation and really these ideas is creating an environment where everyone feels they can be their true selves, so we can all share ideas and thoughts. And again, sometimes that could just be being the person in the room who is brave enough to speak up. Like Shakira said, sometimes it can be a little daunting and does create burnout, but you have to think of it as being a role model and being a leader.
Thank you. Shakira, I'm going to go to you next.
Honestly, one of the hardest lesson I've had to learn, and not in a bad way, it's stop caring for what others think, right? And not like, okay, disobedient and stuff, but they don't pay your bills, so speak up. Who cares that they're gonna think that you're the Latina with the outspoken? In the end, you're gonna do what you have to do to get your message across in a nice way, in a professional way, but be professional. That's all I say. And really don't care what they have to say, because in the end, you're the one that has to do the best for yourself. They're not the ones that are going to pay your bills or put food on the table for anybody. So you have to. And they're not the ones that are really going to change anything for the younger generation, right? It's you who's going to help and elevate those younger generations to come. So, just be yourself, but be professional.
I appreciate that. I want to ask the participants share their thoughts in the chat box so we can engage, just understand what is resonating with you, what is something that you have experienced that you want to share, and I can incorporate that into the discussion, as well as if you have any questions, put those in the chat box. We will answer as many as we can, and those that go unanswered, we will follow up with you by email. But one of the things that was triggered for me is a notion that not everybody is going to like you, right? You all were talking about your experiences. And for me, being in appointed and elected office, I find that people either love me or hate me. So I'll get text messages from individuals that'll say, I was walking down the halls at school today and a couple of teachers were talking about you and they really love you. And, or they loved a motion that you put forth before the school board that was in their favor. But on the other side of that, part of my fight is also those people that absolutely hate me. They don't love that I'm even at the table. They don't love, that I'm there. And as you said, Shakira, that I'm outspoken. So I've been called by white, older male colleagues. I've been called unprofessional. I have been told that my tone will not be tolerated. I have been told that my attitude stinks, right? And all I come there to do is speak up for a population that nobody was speaking up for before I was at the table. So I would love to hear comments in the chat box from individuals that are here. Have there been instances when you've been talked down to or treated in a way that was less than acceptable because you have spoken up? There are some comments coming in that I'm going to read, but feel free to continue to engage. So let's see. A mentor once shared that at first I have to value both my time and experiences because both are worth sharing with others. I love that. And I'm going to ask Glory that you would react to that you need to value your time and your experiences because they are worth sharing with others. And this speaks to the concept that we started off talking about in terms of, overcoming the feeling of bragging to impact others. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, as women, I can definitely say it feels like we've been taught to be submissive and quiet, so it's hard for us to talk about our accomplishments. But just like everyone else, we deserve the time and the recognition. We've worked hard for it. You've worked hard for it, so celebrate it and flaunt it. And when you see someone doing the same, be their cheerleader, lift them up. You never know them to get there, so be accomplishments because you deserve it.
Thank you. I'm going to read a couple more comments and then I'll ask Shakira, I'll ask you to react. So this one is one of my fellows. So I really want to give her the space. I was asked to take the minutes for the meeting. When I flipped my name tag over and they realized we had the same title, they dismissed the ask and did not apologize. And this is Dr. Soribel Henao, who is in higher education. And so the expectation that because somebody looks at you and thinks because of your physical attributes, the color of your skin, and other dynamics that they can make an assumption that you are the assistant versus a tenured professor versus a doctor. I mean, that notion for me is really personal. And so Shakira, what's your reaction to that?
Oh, I've been in many of those. I've been in meetings where I've been the only woman in the room, and they're like, "Can you take the minutes?" And like, I'm not the secretary, no offense to the secretary, but I'm also an engineer here to work and collaborate, not to sit down and listen, take all your notes back and forth. So I've been in that situation, and I would say, it's hard. How do you speak up and say, no, I'm not? So there's been once or twice in the start of my career where obviously I took it. It was like, okay, fine, but then I found a group, it's like I found the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers group, and said, has this happened to you? How have you done it? Right? How have you spoken up? And then, so it's just finding others and see how they've reacted to it. How have they done it? So that we can learn from it. And I can say, instead of me saying, being like, what you think and busting out in the room, but at least I learned from somebody else and said, okay, next time mention to them, like, unfortunately, that's not part of my role. It's not my role or responsibility. I'm also here to collaborate and be part of this meeting. And it just explain, it's not easy. Like I said, it's very uncomfortable. But sometimes you just have to learn. But if you don't, like, it's okay. Like, go and ask somebody. That's why it's, like I said, mention, find a mentor, find other people that have gone through it, so that you're not reinventing the wheel, but you're just learning from somebody else so that you can also then do that.
Exactly. And you started answering one of the questions in the chat box, which was, how can you speak up if you aren't in a status of leadership? When is the right time to start speaking up and showing initiative? Do you want to elaborate a little bit more? And
yeah, definitely. I was going to say that was a good question, is find a group that can also do that for you, right? Because you don't have to be the only one speaking up all the time. So find somebody or a group that you can speak collectively and say, hey, these are the things we're seeing wrong. Like in our company, I can't say my company I'm one of 30,000 people. So it's hard for me to always say, hey, this is what I say. But together, part of the Hispanic Leadership Forum, we've been able to raise awareness of the issues that affect us as Latinos in the company. So again, we were able to find a community and a group that we can then speak up. From there, you also get that motivation to then go back for your own individual groups or for yourself. Be like, okay, I learned from them. Let me go do that now. But there were years, and again, I'm telling you, I've been in the field for 19 years. It is now the last 10 years where I'm finally comfortable speaking up. I would say the first 9 years, I was just like, okay, I belong to groups, and you start to learn, but I kind of took it in and watched and listened and was like, wow, that's not right. But I kind of took it in because I didn't know my place, and I didn't feel, like you said, I was a leader yet. But with the group, we were able to do that.
I appreciate that. And Gloria, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on another comment that was made here, and then I'll read a few more because there's great engagement in the chat box. Keep it going. It's not just the individuals that are being featured on the panel that you can learn from, but also from others in the room. And there was an individual who mentioned, a couple more chats came in, that I'm on a team where there are only 2 minorities, myself and another woman, and sometimes my colleagues mix our names up. What upsets me is that our team is very small. There are only 8 of us. And to that, I want to add, what happens when people don't even attempt to pronounce your name correctly? They're at work. For me, people are now calling me Damary, which you heard when Shakira said it, right? And it always is an amazing feeling when you're in a room and people pronounce your name correctly, because usually I introduce myself as Damary because most people can pronounce that. But part of authenticity is being able to see those different spaces and say, okay, I feel myself accepted here, because people try. Even if somebody butchers it, if they try, I feel so grateful. And I know that they're trying. And part of it is giving people the space to try, so that even though an individual is not necessarily pronouncing your name exactly the way that your family pronounces it, or they're not meeting every standard in terms of how you'd like to see the workspace, if they are trying, give them some of that leeway, right? So Glory, what are your thoughts on that?
Exactly that. It's a lot of education. So when people mispronounce your name, at least they tried and they attempted to do it. So I give them the benefit of the doubt. They definitely had good intentions. It's when they don't even try. So I like to speak to them and let them know, like, thank you for doing that. Maybe after the fact, have a conversation with them about it. But even just the attempt definitely makes me happy. And it's worth having that conversation in the end with them if they didn't even attempt it.
I appreciate it because what you talked about is recognition, right? Recognizing someone's effort. And I think that's important to building allyship and to creating an authentic workspace or an authentic relationship, in the sense that somebody, again, may not meet certain standards in terms of how you'd like to see things, but the fact that they're trying means that there's a partnership. And part of being authentic is also allowing others the space to be able to say, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to do my best. There are a couple of comments in the chat box about finding a group and how do we find groups and or create groups without causing division. You know, how do you balance all of those things, which I think we should address. And a question that we had noted that we wanted to address that I think fits right in here is, are people courageous enough? Are you courageous enough? Are others courageous enough? So Shakira, can you talk to us about how do you create a group and or find a group without having division and or setting yourself apart to the point that you really can't connect with others? And also, am I courageous enough? Are others courageous enough?
Right. So definitely, you will always hear that we're creating divisions in the workplace or anywhere by creating different groups, right? I've heard men, we had an event the other day actually for the women's forum, and the men were like, oh, when are we going to have the men's forum? And I said, well, you're invited to join us, So I've heard it all, but it's still important to create that group. You can either create it on your own, maybe go to HR and see what ERGs or D&I groups they have if you're in a company. If you're working an entrepreneur, you can definitely create your own group membership and community and invite others to join it. So creating that, you're gonna get the resistance again of the division, but in the end, we have to seek sometimes people like us to feel stronger, so that when we can come back and educate others. And going back to allies, it's important for us to know ourselves first, and sometimes you have to be in a group within people like you to then be able to go help and educate others, so that you can bring them in and invite them to our table too, right? So part of our Hispanic Leadership Forum, we're not all Latinos in the group. It's so great to see now other people join the Hispanic Leadership Forum. So it's inviting others to also join it. Just because there's a Hispanic name in the group, it's important to also invite others that are not like you to be part of the group. So that is important. Courageous, again, it's just one step. It's not easy, but it's just taking one step out of your comfort zone. One, not huge. People think you have to take this leap of courage. It's just taking one step. Maybe, today it's speaking up about something, or just going and introducing yourself to somebody and telling them, my name is Shakira instead of Shakira. I've had that problem many times, because like you said, it's like they're not going to pronounce my name right. But just little things, and or telling them a little bit about yourself, I grew up here. And so just one little step, it's how you're going to get courageous.
That is excellent. Thank you. A couple of things you triggered for me, and it's reiterating what Marilyn said. This Latinas Empower Symposium is by Latinas, but it's for everyone. I love that she said that. I don't know about you all, but I shared the link with all of my networks because I know that there's information to be shared that's going to benefit everyone. So that is an important mindset that we want to promote. And I also agree that we often need that space with people that look like us and talk like us, where you can talk about pernil and arroz con gandules and peas and all of these things that we enjoy that somebody else might not understand, because you find the energy there. And in my work, that's what we do on a day-to-day with leaders of color, is create that space where at least here you can say something that pisses you off and get it out of your system, and then go back to work the next day refueled, right? There was a question in the chat box, comment from Wanda that, Gloria, I wanted to ask you. Let's see if I can find it. There've been a lot of really good questions and comments in the chat box. keep it going, and I'm going to bring them in as best we can. So Wanda says, being in leadership, do you agree that we don't celebrate our promotions or accomplishments because of our upbringing and humble beginnings? And I want to weigh in there, Glory, but I know this is very personal to you in your own journey and would love for you to weigh in.
Yes, I definitely see that. A lot of times we kind of hold back and almost think it's just we worked hard and it happens, right? But we should be celebrating that. We should be telling people. And I think we hold back and we don't tell people. So it takes a lot of work to get where you are. So tell everyone about it. Celebrate your promotions. Let people know what it took to get there and be a mentor for someone else who may have been in your shoes. So definitely celebrate it, but pay it forward as well by being someone else's mentor.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we had talked about. We wanted to make sure that everyone understood, we are not all at the same levels. And I often talk about this with civic engagement. In terms of civic engagement or the political space, we don't all have to run for office. Same thing with mentorship. You don't have to create a mentorship program, but there are opportunities to engage. At Prospanica, New York, for example, we just launched, and one of the co-leaders is on here, Keisha, I saw her. We just launched our mentorship program, and it was an opportunity for individuals to give of their time to somebody in their sector for a couple of weeks. That is more manageable than going out and starting your own mentorship program. There are opportunities. Shakira referenced a couple of organizations, and several others have shared organizations in the chat box. There are opportunities to plug in. Maybe it's just working with one individual. Maybe it's joining Big Brothers, Big Sisters. But think about the challenges that you have and are facing in terms of higher education access, in terms of the workplace. Think about the impact that you can have on a young person if you take them on early and you can help them navigate some of these spaces, and you can help them understand the beauty of authenticity, the beauty of being able to speak Spanish, English, Spanglish, or any other language that they know that comes from their family, from their community, or from a point of interest. If you help them understand that, wearing big earrings does not make them unprofessional, because it's about the content, it's about what they know, because they have something to contribute. And I love that that was addressed in the chat box in terms of, I come knowing that I have something to contribute. It takes a lot to get to the place that you can be there and say, I know that I have something to contribute. And maybe that at one point means taking notes for the meeting, but maybe today, as Shakira said, no, I'm not taking notes. I'm here because I have something to say, because I'm running a program or a project and I want to contribute. And so two things I want to do. One, Marilyn referenced my dissertation in the beginning. My dissertation was about Latina leadership in the United States, and it was written in the first person. And I had to defend just that, because that's not academic writing, but it was important to me to create something that people could resonate with, that you could read it and say, okay, I find myself, and I don't have to work through the academic jargon, because that can cause another barrier. But, one area that stood out that was an area of support, but also a hindrance to Latina leadership, was family. And that was so important for me, because it said that while we appreciate the support of family, that it keeps us going, that they show up at events and cheer us on and, really have a space of support, it also is a hindrance when you can't attend your cousin's baby shower because you have to present your dissertation, or you can't plan your tia's 50th birthday party because you have a work event, right? And everybody's pissed off at you because how dare you miss this? And so it becomes a challenge. And sometimes we miss opportunities to be in spaces and places that we need to be in, that we should be in, because of those responsibilities. So I would love to share that with anybody who wants to read it. I also see Central Connecticut State University on here. I've had the opportunity to present to their students, and am glad to do that. So again, how can you share your story, which is your authentic story, with others and inspire others? We all have a responsibility and an opportunity to inspire others. So I'm going to go back to, and there are lots of comments, keep them coming. Again, anything that doesn't get addressed, we will follow up with you by email, because this is a topic that we're all passionate about. But I want to come back to Glory and Shakira, and I want to ask you about something that Shakira had said, and it was, tell your story so it won't be reinvented. And then also, as you elevate, bring others along. Those are two really important but very connected areas. So Shakira, what does that mean? from your personal experience.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a struggle. We've all had our stories. We all have our stories, and we're always afraid to share our stories because one is, as Glory said, it's about being humble, right? We're all humble. But if we share our stories and we spoke out more, then somebody doesn't have to go through the same struggle that I went through. They can just kind of say, okay, she did this, let me just jump to that. She still, or he are still going to face the other struggles. So let them face those struggles that, some of us, and then they can tell those stories to the younger generation, right? I feel like we're always going through the same thing. Like I keep meeting all these Latinas in STEM, and they were like, oh my God, did I this? And I was like, why didn't we talk about this before? Why couldn't we elevate each other before? So that when I was in college or I was in high school trying to decide, I didn't have to go through all that struggle. If somebody else came to me and was like, oh, this is what I did, let me tell you what helped me. So definitely like share our stories. Even if you don't think people want to hear, there's at least one person that wants to hear it. Sometimes we're afraid like, oh, they don't want to hear it. It's a waste of their time. No, tell it. Even it will resonate with at least one person.
Yes, and I love that because I am of the mindset that if I influence one person today and they influence one person, we're going to reach the masses. So I love that. Glory, what are your thoughts on telling your story so it won't be reinvented, as well as when you elevate, bring others along?
It's important to share your story because you don't know who needs to hear it. You don't know who is in that position right now. I think we tend to look at things in the long run of maybe a year down the road or 5 years down the road, but there have definitely been situations in my life and a lot of people where you have to go day by day. So all the leadership and the positions we've gotten weren't done in one day. Everyone came from somewhere, and you might be inspiring someone else who might be in that same position that you were, a year ago, 5 years ago. So it's important to let your story be known and also to relate to other people. It also helps people understand where you're coming from when you share your ideas, and maybe gives a little bit more room for connection with different types of people. So it's really important to share your story with you can and be authentic, be bold, and let everyone know the real you.
I love that. And I saw a couple of questions that we want to address. Let's see. Erica asked, can you talk about a sponsor versus a mentor? Shakira, you started going in that direction. How do you foster genuine connections that are personal and professional? Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we have 50 seconds, but quickly. A mentor is somebody who's just going to give you guidance and advice. A sponsor is somebody who's going to talk about you when you're not there. They're going to speak on your behalf. They're going to think about you. A great example is, Marilyn thought of me about this event, and she talked to me and asked me. She thought about me, even though I wasn't in the room when they were planning this, for me to be part of this. That is a sponsor versus somebody who I can go to for advice and guidance.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to close with a quote by the amazing Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who said, I think it's important to move people beyond just dreaming into doing. They have to be able to see that you are just like them and you made it. So I will just make a call to action for you to be that person, stay your authentic self, and blaze a trail for others to find a role model in you to know that they can do great things. Thank you so much. Don't forget to go back to your email for the link to access the keynote speakers so that you're able to hear from the dynamic women that are with us. There's also going to be salsa music while you wait, so you will enjoy sounds from the Latin Heartbeat Orchestra. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for staying through technology issues. Thank you for joining our breakout session. I hope that today's symposium will keep your flame burning. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day.
Prodigio, dímelo.